yeah, it just really touches my heart this morning to, that everybody wants to come together like this. It's, for me, it's, it's a prayer that we bless each other, that we're always blessing each other. In the Course in Miracles, it talks about how the forgiven mind becomes a blessing, and that's what I feel. It's a true blessing to come together like this. And so the stage is set, the candles lit, the incense is going, the beautiful music, and that's all just to help us to drop in together, It's not really about coming and listening to words come out of my mouth. It's not really, like I've said many times, I'm not a teacher. I'm a bit shy, actually, to be in front of the room. But it's this calling that we all have. And that calling is for a true sense of who we are and a true sense of peace and happiness. It's really what it's about. And the Course in Miracles is a pathway to these experiences through relationship. So we can't deny that. If the Course in Miracles is our pathway, then then we use the relationships to come home. And I feel like these gatherings are for that very purpose, to be able to connect beyond the words, really, beyond the personalities. Personalities will never connect. But as we drop down deeper and deeper, and just having the space be a peaceful place, a place where you can walk in and you can sense maybe a little bit difference in vibration, and that's just to help us to remember, help us to drop, and to listen with our heart. It's if you can do that, the best you can do that, the better, because you'll receive the gift that you came here for, whatever that is. And if there is something on your heart, to just be in that prayer of, help it be somehow nurtured today, somehow released, if there's something weighing on you. And if you're here just to expand the vibration that you're already in, to expand that love and that feeling of gratitude, beautiful. Because we all come from different backgrounds and we all come from different places, and so the thing is that love answers all of those places. Love answers all of those places, no matter if you're well on the path and you're feeling very peaceful, but with this pathway, it seems like it's always ever expanding. It's like we can get on one rung of the ladder and we can feel pretty good there, and then we expand more and more. And it should always feel that. It should feel vibrant. It should feel happy. It should feel expansive, inspirational, and peaceful at the heart of it. It doesn't have to be that we're out doing some huge thing, but when you can start to see this love reflected to you instead of the guilt that we've carried for so much of our lifetimes, this guilt of the tiny mad idea that just loops and loops and loops and loops. And so the power of coming together, Jesus says, where two or more are gathered, there I am. And I really have always taken that very much to heart, that is a truth. Okay, so I'm just going to open my mind to that. So there's many more than two of us here, so I feel like that presence is right here with us. It's always with us. We just tend not to notice. We tend to ignore the one love that will give us everything that we've ever wanted or needed. And that is a state of mind. It's not really about the form. This past week we've been talking quite a bit about leading with the content, leading with the purpose instead of leading with the form. And I know that for myself there were many times where I would pray for things to work out in form. And that's a stepping stone, I suppose, but what we're really going for is a state of mind that goes way beyond the form. So it doesn't matter where we are, it doesn't matter what we're doing, that we always feel a sense of connection with this true love. Because this really should be an amazing love story, It's almost like, the prodigal son story. It should be that kind of story where we're ever coming closer and closer to this true love, And to court that love, to be with that love, to pay attention to that love, which many times we don't. We ignore that love, and we try to find a release from the inner unfulfillment by trying to find some other kind of love, right? So we go for the jobs or the houses or the people or the neediness, and these are all the things that need to be directed back towards this true love, this true lover. And you know how you feel when you're first, say you're first falling in love with somebody, right? That's so pure. That's kind of a reminder. That's why it feels so expansive and so beautiful, because it really is it's a pure love. And then, of course, all of the conditioning and all the programming comes on top of it, and all the specialness and the grabs and all the things that turns it from pure to impure. And so we want to come back to this true love. You know, Jesus says that there's only one relationship, and that's with God. And it sure doesn't seem that way, but we can certainly use our relationships to come back to that love. And it doesn't mean that we don't have deep and profound encounters with each other, but if that purpose is always to use that love, not to grab onto that love, not to make that love a source of an idol, something that you're so zeroed down in on that you can't see all the brilliance that's all around us all the time, in each other, in wherever we're at, in the sky, in a flower, it doesn't really matter. And so this focus of being in the space with this truer connection of love is really what the Course is all about. Now, it says that it doesn't focus on love because love is our natural inheritance. Love is what we are. It's truly what we are. But if we're not having that experience of that purity, almost like when you first meet somebody that you feel so in love with, that should be a natural state of being. And that's what's available to us. And that's what we are. But that's why Jesus, for the most part, I think 3/4 of the entire book is devoted to what we're not. Because we have to unwind out of those concepts and those thick beliefs that we are alone in a world and we need to make it on our own. That's a terrifying reality. And it's so terrifying that we've pushed it out of awareness. And that's the thing that we want to allow now back up into awareness. And many of us have been doing that for quite some time. So there's, everybody's where they're at, but this allowance is one of the most important things to get in touch with that true love. And that true love is just there in patience, just like it's never not been there. It's never been anything different. It's just that we've fallen asleep. And it's no different, Jesus says, than the dream that we had last night. And that's pretty difficult for most people to actually accept. But can you find it in your mind, just as I say it, what a relief if everything that's ever happened in my lifetime is actually no more important than the dream I had last night. It kind of puts things into a really nice, easy perspective. Really. It's like, that's where guilt disappears. That's where you no longer have to hang on to things that you think you did or were done to you. That they can be released from your heart so that this true lover, this true love can come forward. And there's nothing more satisfying than that, because it satisfies all questions. It satisfies all needs, all wants, all desires. And we talked a couple of weeks ago about the desire and how important that desire to be very clear. And if you're uncomfortable or in contraction in any way in your heart, it's because you want something. You want something that you think you don't have, when in all actuality you have it. You've just forgotten it. So we want to come together and we want to remember. We want to fall in love, in true love, a love that will never leave you, never abandon you. That's always there. And so we practice this thing called forgiveness over and over and over. And it's worthy. It's worth it, to make this your practice. And one of the things that gets in the way of that practice is a spiritual mask. The spiritual mask gets in the way of true forgiveness. And some of you may be familiar with Course in Miracles students who always say it's just an illusion. I know I did that for years. I literally did that for years. I checked so far out that I was only managing my healing. I was not actually practicing forgiveness. So I was in this management position where I could get to neutrality. I could get to a peaceful place, pseudo-peaceful place. But I never had joy. So I was managing my life, getting to that neutral place. And honestly, it was very sincere. I was doing the best I could with what I knew. But we don't want to manage this healing. We want to truly heal. We want to truly get in touch with that spiritual mask so we can let it go. Because that spiritual mask will throw up those cliches that the Course in Miracles, these are very, very profound and deep teachings. I need do nothing is not a cliche, and it's not an excuse not to do the work. It's a very high level of experience after years of letting go of the self-concepts. Then you abide in that, of course, but you cannot skip steps. And the spiritual mask will want to come up and paint a pretty picture of yourself. Really. And it's sincere, right? I was very sincere. I mean, I just wanted to be that. I wanted to be spiritual, and I didn't know how. So I did the best I could by contriving this concept. I owned a spiritual retreat center. I had all the things that around me. I had the crystal. I had it all. The cool music and everything. I had it all. And it was sincere. I'm not saying that it's not a sincere step. But all concepts, salvation is the release from concepts. So we want to exchange these concepts that are not helpful to a more helpful one, to a more helpful one, all in the direction of God, all in the direction of your true love. And then they morph and they change. I used to own beauty salon, okay? Then it started turning into almost like the clients would come in and we would just start talking higher and higher, right? Because I was changing. Then I let that go. Then I became a retreat center owner with eclectic, Buddhists, all kinds of people coming. It was great. So each concept gets turned in for one that takes you closer to what resonates in your heart. Because as you know, as we go through our life, there are certain things that we do, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't work anymore. It's like, what happened to that? It used to be so good, Well, that's when we want to let go. That's when we want to authentically open our mind and let go, right? And so there's this thing called spiritual bypass. In the community that we lived in for many years, it was called Metaphysical Ghosting. And that means that you come at whatever you're feeling in a way that you just want to control it and manage it. You want to push it down as quickly as possible so that you can put on your happy face and that the people around you will feel good because you feel good. And if they don't feel good, you'll try to make them feel good. Okay? And this is not healing. And in a community, and I'm calling this is an undefined community here in Ahihique. It's really beautiful. It's like people just, we're kind of drawn here, right? It's like this beautiful, amazing place, and there's so many of us here. It's like we can use this as like a little vortex of really, truly meeting each other authentically. And that metaphysical ghost or that spiritual bypass can really keep you looping for a very long time. So we want to get in touch. We want to know that this is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be healing. Well, healing doesn't feel good. Healing is uncomfortable. Facing those masks, letting go of those controls is very, very, very uncomfortable to the ego. It's counterintuitive to the ego. And sometimes you'll even feel like you're going against your own intuition. And that's where mighty companions come in. And mighty companions come in, and perhaps there's certain types of connections that feel really supercharged for a certain amount of time. And there's a reason for that. You can really get a lot of work done with each other. And so this spiritual bypassing and these spiritual masks, and especially when you're living in a community where there are a lot of like-minded people, it can be very easy to fall into that. It's not bad. It's really like, for me, I know that I was very, very sincere because I wanted to be like I thought I was supposed to be. You know, I wanted to be like that, and I was practicing the Course as best I could. I was mixing it with a lot of stuff, but the Course was kind of the one that I kept coming back to. So I didn't have groups. I lived out in the middle of a canyon in Utah where it's now the Living Miracles Monastery. That was my retreat center. And I just thought I could meditate my way to God and put on a happy face. Well, I was prompted this morning to tell a parable, and the difference between a parable and my story is that a parable is told because it's helpful for awakening. It's not some story. In fact, Laverne was saying that she's been meeting with a lot of people around the store this week, and somebody was asking her about her past, and she couldn't pull it up. She couldn't pull it up, and the reason she couldn't pull it up because we don't dwell there anymore. We've learned that, you know, linear time is a trap, but these stories, which are now turned into parables, can be healing. And then when those opportunities come, then you share. And believe me, this is the first time this has been shared in its entirety. And it is quite a story. It sounds a little bit like a bad country western song. But in 2008, I started to hear that I was supposed to go deeper. And I always had a really deep call for spirituality. And I didn't know what that meant. And I had a plan, you guys. I had a plan. I was going to sell my spiritual retreat center. I was going to go down the river with my husband. And I was going to live on the river with my horses and my husband. And he could do everything. He was going to build me a little meditation hut on the other side of the river. And I was going to live happily ever after. And that was my plan. And that was a spiritual plan in my mind. In my mind, it was a spiritual plan. And we had our place for sale for several years, and every time we'd get a full price offer, it would fall through. I mean, it was just insane. It was just like so there was this feeling of stuckness, right? Because it went on for like 3-4 years. And it would be so exciting. Oh, we're getting an offer, you know, we're going to go do my spiritual plan. And so what happened was I kept hearing this voice, actually, you need to go deeper. And I'm like, okay, I'll go deeper as long as I do it the way that I think I'm going to do it, right? So I'm sure the place is going to sell because that's how I'm going to go deeper. I won't have the stress of my business anymore. And so what happened was, in the winter of 2007. Interesting. We were taking care, we had horses, and we were taking care of our neighbors' horses, their ranch. And so every day in the winter in Utah, we had to go down and feed these horses. And we had ordered this hay, and the hay was moldy. And you can't feed horses moldy hay. So every day we'd go down to the barn in this freezing weather, and we would try to take the good bales from the bad bales. Take the mold out of the hay so we could feed our horses. Every day, my husband would bitch excessively about this guy that wouldn't stand behind the goddamn moldy hay. Okay? Every day I would listen to this, right? About the hay and this absolute grievance about the hay. Okay, so we'd go all winter, right? I'm listening to this. Now I'm practicing forgiveness, right? So I'm just going into my room and I'm asking to see this differently, right? Because that's all I know. I don't know that I can stand up and say, hey, do you want to look at this differently or not? Because I'm not going to be a part of this every single day, right? I didn't know I could do that because I thought it was my problem, right? Ultimately it is because I'm not speaking. I'm just going to this metaphysical ghost. Well, it's just an illusion, so all I need to do is forgive it. So fast forward to spring. Spring comes, And the moldy hay needs to be burned because, you know, what are you going to do? Well, okay, hold on a second. See, I'm so completely not familiar with my own story anymore. I got to go back just a second. So there we are. Winter's coming to an end. And the other thing that my husband hated was he hated the free-range cattle because they'd come on our ground and they would break the sprinkler heads and they would walk through our ponds. And he really hated the rancher that owned the cows, okay? So you can see where this is going. So anyway, he would go out with the shotgun and he would shoot in the air to scare the cows away, right? So this was a routine. And so one day he comes in and he's completely white. And he says, I think I hit one. I said, hit one what? I think I hit one of the cows. And I was just like, oh my God. Okay, so he's got to go down, check out if he's actually hit this cow. So he goes down. Yep, comes back up. Yeah, I hit it, but it's not dead. So I said, okay, well, you're going to go down and you're going to have to kill the cow because the rancher, I mean, it just this story is just so bizarre, but this is not some peaceful kind of rancher. His son was in jail for double homicide. And they did not like us because we tried to stop them building a rock quarry down the road. Okay, so there's history there, right? Okay, so he goes down. The cow is badly wounded anyway. He goes down and he shoots the cow again. Now, my husband wouldn't hurt a flea, really. He is a very kind-hearted. So he comes back. He's just he's just distraught, right? And I can feel this anger start to come up, but as a good Course in Miracles student, I'm going to push it right back down. I'm going to go out into the gathering room, and I said, do not come and find me until I get to the bottom of this in my own mind. So I go out to the gathering room. I go into prayer. I'm just like, you know, show me what to do, show me what to do. Only within the awareness of what I had was I thought all I could hear was, you just need to love him. Okay, you just need to love him, because I knew he was mortified. So I go back out and I'm handling it the best that I can. So he knows he has to go down there and bury this cow, because if the rancher sees the cow, first of all, it's a $1,000 fine, which we didn't have the money, but it would just cause all kinds of havoc. So he went down and he covered it up. He thought he would go down with the backhoe in the middle of the night because the rancher might see him burying his cow. So he goes down and he covers him up with sagebrush, right? And I said, does it have a baby? No, no babies, because it was almost spring. Next morning, this is like a Freddy Krueger movie. The next morning, we look out, because we can see down in the valley, right, from where our house is, because we're up on a cliff. And there's a baby standing right by the sagebrush. So my husband goes down, and the mama cow was still not dead. It was still not dead. And it had moved its head so it could see its baby. I mean, this is like the worst nightmare ever, okay? I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I just couldn't even believe it. So back into the gathering room I go to try to figure this out. So this time he does actually kill the cow. And he buries it in the night. So the next morning, we're looking down, and we see the whole herd of cows standing on the grave. And he's like, I got to go down and scatter those cows. I said, you got to leave them alone. You have no idea what they're doing. They're probably just there. You know, we don't know what animals go through. They're probably just standing there because they know that she's there and the baby's there. Who knows? Just leave them alone. Okay, so this is like so traumatic, you guys, that I don't know how to process it, right? So then, seriously, 5 days later, we're down at the ranch. Now, what I had suggested to my husband was, why don't you give the rancher, after he had killed his cow, why don't you give the rancher the hay, because the cows can eat the hay. They can eat moldy hay. As a gesture, just even if it's within your own mind, to give something back, right? No, I'm going to burn it. Okay. Well, his dad was a New York City fireman. He's very, very fire conscious. He knows how to do this stuff, right? So there we are. Now he's managing this ranch that the inventor of Dolby Surround Sound owns. This is no small thing, okay? Huge, beautiful barns. So he goes down, and I'm down having a visit with them on their porch, and straight down I can see the barn, right? So he's down there, he's dug a trench around the hay, and we have a river right there, and he had the water, he had it all, right? So he starts burning the goddamn moldy hay, and then he thinks it's out. So he goes to town, and we're still sitting up on the veranda, and we look down, and this whole barn, it's like one of those barns that you would see in one of those beautiful calendars, you know? It's totally engulfed in flames. It's totally engulfed in flames. So I'm like, oh my God. Now this is only 5 days after the cow. I wasn't quite even, I didn't quite have my management complete at that point. So then, of course, nothing could be worse for my husband than a fire. I mean, he grew up with, if you can imagine, New York's finest, you know. So I call him on the phone because he's in town. Now, we're 45 minutes from a volunteer fire department. We've got a whole forest. We got animals. We got all kinds of stuff. There's this huge aspen grove right next to the barn. So I'm like, okay. So I got to get like as centered as I can. So they get there and they put it out. It doesn't spread. So it's like this deep kind of just horrible stuff, right? So then, just trying to manage it in my mind. Just trying to find peace in all of that, right? And then about a month later, I know this sounds ridiculous, but he accidentally ran over our neighbor's dog. Now,
God, the karma.
I know. I've never told it in its entirety. It's quite, oh my God. So anyway, the dog, our nice neighbor, the dog was underneath the truck, and he pulled out. So, okay, well, at this point, I don't even know what to do with myself because I think I'm struggling between depression and just just absolute unknowing what to do. And I'm praying, Well, if the retreat center would just sell, then everything would be okay, and he wouldn't be under so much stress, and this stuff wouldn't be happening. You see, these are the things that I was telling myself. Okay, so now we're in the fall, and I had already booked David Hoffmeister to come to my retreat center to do a retreat in November. Okay, so I was very much into horses at the time, and I was learning how to work with them, and I was working with this colt, and he threw me off, and I broke my femur in 2 places, and that was in September, maybe late August, and so I remember when he bucked me off, and it was really, really, really severe. I knew that it was broken straight away. That's a whole nother story. I'm not going to go into it. It was very, very, very miraculous. But then there I was. Okay, I was really stuck now because I couldn't move. And so at that point, okay, this is all covering this year of 2008. At that point, I I guess I'm just really a hard nut to crack, but I actually at that point I finally said, okay, what am I missing here? You know, something, what's going on here? Because this is just too bizarre to have those 4 major events happen in 1 year. And so I had surgery, and then I was just, you know, I was in my bed, and so it was this kind of holy moment where I knew that something definitely had to give, and what actually had to give was my idea of how this was supposed to go. And so I truly, in my heart of hearts, I finally said to this true love that only wants the best and wants to give me everything, I said, okay, I'm going to give you all of my ideas and your will be done. So you just let me know whatever that is. And within days, I heard, you need to take the retreat center off the market. Now, I knew that was going to be a deal breaker with my husband because he wanted out of there. He was like Thor. David used to call him Thor. He would just be holding everything together with duct tape because it was so, this was a massive property and he knew how to do everything, and he was exhausted. We were both exhausted. And so I thought, oh, wow, ooh, take the retreat off the market. And it said, you'll use this as this will be a International Course in Miracles retreat center. And so I sat down, I told him, I said, we're going to take it off. It was my place. He came in after I had created it, but he was very invested in it, and he was invested in the belief that we were going to move down the road and have a very happy, simple life with a lot of money. And so, so then David, David came in November. And that little voice the year before that said, you got to go deeper, it was being answered, because I finally gave up my ideas of what it was that I thought I needed to be happy. And I was very, very open. Did I know how it was going to go? Absolutely not. But I knew the way that it was going was not bringing any joy or expansion into my life. And so then when David came and we had a beautiful retreat. I mean, I just thought he was coming to do a retreat, honestly. It's like, but yeah, then things sped up very, very quickly, and I realized that I was to dedicate my life to this and turn the retreat center over to the foundation, and I always knew that on some level that place was to be used in a bigger way. I never felt a real ownership around it, and so it was, this. I got the gift of giving, like truly giving it away, and really walking directly into the unknown, without any kind of awareness of what was going to happen. Just trust. But at that point, I really, I really had nothing else to do at that point, because I knew he was unhappy. And I knew I was unhappy. I was not unhappy with him. I loved him very much. He was a beautiful, beautiful person. But he wasn't going in the same direction that I was going. And like I said, I think I've shared here before, when I did actually approach him about seeing things in a different way, in his Brooklyn accent, he said, when a guy's an asshole, he's just an asshole. So I knew it was just a difference of really life. Forget about the spirituality aspect of it, but when you're with somebody that you don't share the same purpose, whatever that purpose might be, you have to ask yourself, what is it? Why are we together? It's probably got a lot to do with feeling taken care of or whatever. So my spiritual mask had to come down, and a lot of times we don't even know that we're in one. We don't know it. But if you're not feeling a sense of expansion and a deeper relationship with this joy, a deeper relationship with yourself, a deeper sense of relationship with peace, and you think you're on some spiritual journey, there's probably some ghosting going on, and there's probably some compromise going on. And Jesus says in the Course in Miracles, you will learn this course entirely or not at all. And these words are not hard to understand. They're maybe hard to implement and accept, but they are not hard to understand what Jesus says in the Course in Miracles. And, you know, like the butterfly, like the caterpillar, you know, we approach the Course in Miracles with all this kind of enthusiasm of going into this cocoon. And then we get in there, and then we realize what it's actually saying, and there's some, whoa, he's really asking me to give up this or give up that. But you've gone too far, because you know the message is somehow pulling you in, but you know that at that certain point you have to liquefy. And that's what the caterpillar does. It doesn't come out a flying caterpillar. It comes out an entirely different animal. So it has to completely liquefy its body. And this is the journey. And so the beautiful part about it is that we've been given forgiveness to take us slowly. He says our biggest fear is the light. Our biggest fear is love. Okay? Now, our biggest fear in this world is not the love of this world, because the love of this world is needy and it's grabby, and it gives you a release for 1 second. But the fear, and we can deal with all that stuff, but the fear of true love, the fear of the light of what we are, that's terrifying to the ego. So what we do is we see it, you know, maybe just through the learning, the book learning of A Course in Miracles, intellectually, that this is a projection of the tiny mad idea, right? Well, that's helpful to know. Okay, so anything that's upsetting to me is just the tiny mad idea playing out in a loop. Now I need to take responsibility, not responsibility for the error. You're not you're not responsible for the error. And I think that that's what we get caught up in as the spiritual trap, is we try to fix things in form to make it better. Especially with interpersonal relationships. We try to make it better so that the form will reflect back to me that I'm okay. That's not it. So we want to go very, very deeply into this acceptance of the correction, because it's already happened. Now, our minds can't grasp that this has never happened at all, okay? So we don't go there. But we will have faith that as we forgive, we will start to remember how this is just a dream. We'll start to remember through experience, not through concepts. We don't want the concepts. We want the actual experience of this that ends all questions and ends all turmoil. It ends the dream of grief and pain completely. So this is a beautiful opportunity that we have, and I think that the reason that story was prompted is because this is such a power, you know, like Jesus says, you can learn through others, right? You can learn through others. You don't have to go through those things. That's why movies are used. That's why expression sessions are used. That's why sharing your story, when it's still a story, because it hasn't turned into a parable yet, it's important to share the story so you can release it from your heart and start to get perspective on it. You don't want to deny these things. You don't want to pretend that you feel good when you don't feel good. I mean, that is just absolutely not necessary, and it's absolutely keeping the pain in place. To be able to go to trusted friends who can hold the space and say, I need a miracle, and not have them sit there and try to fix you, but just to be able to say it in the presence of somebody who's not going to believe it, and if they believe it, they have to check their own mind and release it as well. That is a powerful relationship. Those are the relationships we want. We want relationships where we can be with each other in this unconditional way, and until we can get to that unconditionality, at least we're headed in that direction. And that's the power of relationships, and that's the power that's in this room. We all have the opportunity because there's some foundation, otherwise nobody would be here. There's some sort of calling in the heart, perhaps, to go into that more authentically. I haven't lived here. I haven't lived in Ahihique. I lived in Chapala, and I lived with David for some times and some years here, and Laverne's lived here. But this is all new to us, you know. Well, this is all new to us, to have kind of an undefined experience, which is beautiful. It's time for that. It's time for self-responsibility and to be able to share the gifts that have been given. And what I feel, and Laverne feels as well, we really feel this kinship with you guys, and it's very beautiful. It's like, wow, you know, this is such a great place to be. And then you guys all show up in the living room, and I'm like, wow, this is really nice. Like, you know, nothing's planned. We don't sit around and, you know, I'm not interested in being over a community anymore. That's not what I'm doing. But I'm here just like you're here, you know. And this is where the equality is. The equality is the purpose. You know, the equality is the purpose that we share. And the only thing that will stabilize you in this world is a shared purpose. Jesus says that in the Course in Miracles. I think that's so beautiful, because you can't find stability in this world. I think we all understand that, especially now. It's like before, maybe there were little glimpses of it, but now it's just complete chaos and unknown, and you can't figure anything out, and you can't plan. It's just like, it's a gift, though. Everything works together for our good. Everything works together for our good. If you just believed that much, if you just believe that much of what Jesus says in the Course in Miracles, that all things work together for good and there are no exceptions except for in the ego's judgment. If we just believe that, then the pandemic must be working for our good. Everything, no matter what it is, the broken leg, the dead cow, the dead dog, the moldy hay, you see. And just to go back to that story a little bit, that parable, is you can see the compromise that I was living in. I was living in total compromise, but I thought I was living in my spiritual bubble. And so it needed a good kick, right? Like, it needed a really good kick. And the compromise simply was, and I'm sure that many of you have probably experienced this as I did, the compromise was not sharing my authenticity with my husband, not sharing what lit me up, not sharing that, to me, you know, practicing looking at things differently from a perspective of love instead of fear, even though I didn't really know what I was talking about. That's where my mind was. And then saying, you know what? I've invited you to see things differently because I know it's possible, and you've refused. Now I have a choice to make. You know what I mean? I have a choice to make. Like, is this really the best relationship to be in for my awakening? Well, no. Did we love each other? Absolutely. Did we honor each other when I made this decision to leave? Did I invite him to come with me? Yes, I did. He didn't want to. That's fine. No harm, no foul. But for me to stay there, I mean, you look at the Buddha, okay? He left the palace. 400 million Buddhists in the world. I mean, you know, these are no small decisions. You know, we're going to expand out. We're going to expand out. Anybody seen Lucy? We're going to expand out into everything, you know? And this is our natural. Our naturalness is to heal. Let's heal. Is healing easy? No. Was going through that year easy? No. Was the next following 8 years easy? No. Not at all. When I was confronted with my self-concepts and, you know, the feeling of losing control and, you know, being in relationships where I had to be totally honest, oh my God, it felt ruthless at times. But the only thing it felt ruthless to was the self-concept that was being dissolved. And do you know that when Jesus talks about forgiveness, and he talks so beautifully about what it offers us, and I think we all know it, and certainly I've been living in that realm where everything is done for you, that you don't need to struggle. You know, it's not natural for us to struggle. It's not natural for us to try to figure things out. That's very, very unnatural. That is being so identified with being a human being on this earth as if it's a fact, and it's not a fact. You are spirit. And we all join in that common place that is the truth of who we are, which is in that spirit realm. And that is above the battleground. That's above the battleground of thought. And you're probably all aware of the voices in your head. You got the good voice and the bad voice. Well, we're going up here, because the good voice that says, oh, you need to do your course lessons today, and you need to forgive that person, even though you're raging inside. It's like those are the voices that are constantly good and evil, good and evil. Well, we're going up here to the third choice, and that third choice is forgiveness, and that third choice will dissolve these two choices. There are no choices at all. So I think it's the most inspiring way to live in this, and the more that you get onto how it can lead and guide your life, the more you'll expand into this feeling of the joy. Because that's the thing about David. When I met him, I thought, he's got joy. I don't have joy. Well, I have joy now. But I didn't have joy then, because I was managing my healing. And I was afraid to feel bad, because if I felt bad, then that meant I wasn't spiritual. That's just self-abuse right there. That is self-abuse. Nobody else is doing that to you. And so at least today, at least if nothing else, it's like, please leave knowing that you're worthy. You're worthy to feel what you feel. You're healing. You're healing your mind. And you're not healing alone. You're healing for the whole universe. And I never used to know what that meant. It's like, but it is. It's the whole sonship, and we're in this together. And so we want to have our relationships be of purpose, because it's happy. That's why. Because it's happy. It's what starts to bubble up underneath every time you think you're gonna, oh, okay, I've got all the evidence in the world that this person has done me wrong. So I'm gonna make sure that they pay for it, or I'll be really, really righteous and I'll forgive them for what they did do. But Jesus is saying, forgive your brother for what he did not do. What does that mean? What does it mean when it's, I do this to myself? It's because you have to get back down to that awareness that this is all a projection of the madness of the tiny mad idea, and that your brother's playing out to you exactly what you believe is true. You still believe in attack. So what's going to happen? You're going to see it everywhere, and you're going to probably be a victim of it because you believe in it. And so, how much courage does it take when you've got all the evidence in the world that somebody has mistreated you? And what is that line in the Course about, what is it? I always say it wrong, about being mistreated.
Yeah. Beware of the temptation to perceive yourself
unfairly treated. I had that on my screensaver for a year while I was in community, because it was so buried, it was so buried. And so when you come into this healing realm and come into these healing relationships, then watch out, because the lid is going to get lifted up and those skeletons are going to come forward. But if we understand that that's actually what's happening, can't we just love each other through it? Can't we just say, and when you talk about intimacy, the true intimacy, it's not about bodies being together. It's about opening your mind to somebody. Because, believe you me, there's a lot of self-hatred in there that you're not even aware of. And when you push things out of awareness, it's called denial. And why is it? It's denial because you don't know it's actually there. And I had to literally come into community, because I had built up such a beautiful queendom, and I had such a nice life that I had managed it so perfectly. No true happiness, but it was managed, right? That when I came into community, that's when it all started to come up. I was like, well, this can't be right. I'm not happy now. I'm in community, but really I was shown, because I had very powerful symbols that could tell me what was happening, is that it was being allowed now to come back into awareness. So all those things that I was afraid of, that I managed over the top of and controlled over the top of, were now able to start to come into the light, because that darkness, we call it darkness, has to come into the light, right? And so we have to give it the allowance to do so. And that's the most difficult thing for a spiritual self-concept to do, because a spiritual self-concept just wants to feel good and bright and happy all the time, But that's not going to do it. That's not going to get you through that period of time where everything is happening and you feel like you're losing control and you feel like you're upside down and you're disoriented. And these are the words that he uses. He uses this extreme disorientation. And that's why mighty companions come. Because at that point, you're serious, you're in that cocoon, you see you got to liquefy, and you say yes to it. Because you can't back out, because your front legs are already liquefied.
Lucy.
Yeah, so one of the things that's very, very helpful for me, and seeing, being over communities and living in community and going through my own process, is really letting go of, and this is the purpose for this whole parable, really letting go of thinking that you know any way, shape, or form how this is to go. Because that just certainly stood in my way. Because there was a line drawn in the sand. I'm selling this place. I'm going to have a lot of money. I'm going to have my husband, my horses, and I'll be able to meditate 8 hours a day. So, just a deep invitation to just really look deeply into your own heart and see where it is that you think that you know how your awakening is supposed to look. Because I will guarantee it's probably not going to be that way. And as long as we're hanging on to that, it's like, the Spirit can't come in. The Spirit can't come in and show you the way. And I think one of the most difficult parts about being in A Course in Miracles, if it's your path, is that uncomfortable part. It's just so uncomfortable. And yet, if you're around people that understand that you're actually not going to manage your healing anymore, you're actually going to allow it. And then don't put a time frame on it, like it's going to take 2 weeks or something. It's like, this is a life practice. What else do we have to do? We might as well use time in the most purposeful way. And every day practice. Become a practitioner of the Course in Miracles. If you've studied it for years, put it down. You don't need it. You need to practice what it says. And that's where the results will start to come. Because why? We don't want this in our head. We want this in our heart. We want to feel this. We want to feel that we're not separate. We want to feel that we're not alone. We want to feel that somebody's got our back. And they're not somebody in form. It's something so powerful that you feel you've been pulled towards. Now let it pull you even closer to it. And then just practice that every day, because the thing is, you can always tell by how you feel, and Jesus says in the Course in Miracles, whatever you think you need will hurt you. Isn't that amazing? Whatever you think you need will hurt you. It's crazy. It's crazy to the ego, right? So it's this kind of dissolving of the I know mind, and just little by little, we have to do this step by step by step, because it's too frightening, isn't it? It's just too frightening. We're so afraid, and we're familiar with this abuse. We're familiar with how we beat up ourselves. We're familiar with the little general in our mind that's always telling us that we can't do anything that's worth anything. So we want to, for me, I just join hands with everybody. I join hands with, this deep prayer of forgiveness, this deep prayer of release from the tyranny in our own mind, because it is in our own mind. And if you are, you can just take it with like right now, the practice with the pandemic. How much time do you spend assessing and looking and figuring it out? And I'm saying use your guidance. Use your guidance. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't want to wear one, then don't wear one. If you want to, whatever you feel guided in the moment. This is not a cookie cutter thing. This is like you have to go in and you have to find that place. And if there's a lot of fear around it, then of course you need to look at what that fear is. But it still doesn't mean you don't wear a mask if you want to wear a mask. So it's just these things are up in our awareness right now on a kind of seems like a global scale. But I think there's a deep and profound message going on right now. And we've called it forth. This isn't happening to us. It's happening through us. So let's use it. Let's use it for the huge opportunity it seems to be, which is, are you going to forgive this nightmare, or are you going to continue to recycle it? Are you going to continue to plug into that reality? Willow just flew up to Florida, okay? Hot spot, right? That's one of the hot spots. She's flown up to Florida, and we talked before she went, and we've been talking about parting the Red Sea, right? Like, you know what? If it's guided that you go, where she's going up there for a particular mission, then it's provided. Everything will be provided. So she texts me, and she says, oh, it's the best time to fly. Nobody's on the flights. It's the airport. There was hardly anybody there. She didn't call forth witnesses of hysteria, and she flew right into the hot spot. And so I believe in the parting of the Red Sea. I believe in the faith of a mustard seed. I believe in being convinced by this power, because that's what has to happen. And as long as you have your hands on the wheel, you will never be able to be convinced. And we want to be convinced that we're loved. We want to be convinced that we're cared for. We want to be convinced that this invisible force exists. And the only way you do that is through stepping one step at a time towards trusting what seems to be appearing in front of you for your awakening. You know? And that could be an angry person at the store or whatever. Could be a lot of things. But this is not a kumbaya, sit around the fire pathway. The Course in Miracles is radical. It is a radical pathway. And so we do it the best that we can in the moment that's given. But as you increase your commitment to, and really your worthiness to paying that much attention to your mind, you know, and come out of this fog. I was in such an extreme fog when I went into Living Miracles. I mean it. I wouldn't pay attention to anything because I thought it was all an illusion. And then I was being put over the database. Like I had to pay attention to this, you know, but it was like this, come back, you know. You're not ready to go there yet. You've skipped massive amounts of steps through this. It's just an illusion. Now, yes, it is, but not if you believe it. If you believe it, it's real, right? So you can't not just say, oh, I know that's not real. And I tell you, I talk to a lot of people, and I hear it over and over. I know this isn't real. And I say, no, you don't know it's not real. So let's deal with it. That's the kindest thing to do, and that's what's being called on to do, actually. That is proper forgiveness. The way I was doing it in the past, and maybe some of you do it, was headed straight for, you know, the dead cow, the dead dog, the burnt down barn, and the broken femur, you know. So it's a beautiful ride when you start to just have these little tweaks in your mind, because it was just little tweaks. That's all it was. It wasn't some majorly new thing that I was learning from David, but it was like, oh, I got derailed there because I made an assumption that it's all an illusion was something I was supposed to be saying all the time. You know what I mean? It was like, and so the compromise comes in. You want to be spiritual. So I hope that this is, this is helpful today, because I've never told that story in its entirety. Certainly I've never told it on a recording or with a group. Maybe individually, like certain parts of it would come out, but it's quite a dramatic story. But I'm sure that we all have our stories, and I'm sure that we all can relate to what I've shared, and so I really appreciate the opportunity to cry a little about it and laugh a little bit about it, because it was a very, very intense time, and yet all things work together for good. There are no exceptions, and even all of those things work together. And just a side note on my husband, he's very, very happy. He's very happy, and David used to say, you must focus on what you're being absorbed into, not what you're letting go of, and that the Spirit will take care of him as much as the Spirit will take care of you. And I've seen that happen. And he's been blessed, because we came together, and he knew I had a deep spiritual calling. So it was beautiful. It was a beautiful, very sad and intense. And I got to see what specialness at its max was, which is painful. And I remember one night, and some of you have heard this, but I'll just throw it in here at the end. One night I was getting up out of my bed and he wasn't in it. And I thought, what are you doing? Are you crazy? After I told him I was, we knew we were going to separate. And I just was panicked. Like, what am I going to do without him? I'm just going, why can't I just be normal? You know what I mean? Why do I have to have this calling? And so I was going to get up and go find him and say, I take it all back. I don't want to do any of it, right? And I put my foot on the floor out of the bed, and I don't hear voices very often, but I heard, this is what you've settled for as love. This is what you've settled for as love. Pain, fear of loss, intense anxiety, just this intense feeling I'm going to lose him. And it stopped me in my tracks, and I was like, okay, now I get that. I get that. This isn't Christ's love. And that's what I was going for real. And so I was able to get back in bed and just lay there in that, like, wow. And that not only did I hear that, but I had this visual of, because I had this spiritual retreat center that I thought was heaven on earth, and I had built it up to be this, this sacred place in this sacred canyon. And then I just saw all the blood running on the walls, all of it. It was just an idol. It was all an idol. And the tricky part about the ego is that it dresses our idols up into these really beautiful things. Really beautiful things. And so it's good to question them all, and that's what we're guided to do in the Course, is to question every value that we hold. Well, actually what ends up happening is you question until you realize they're all the same, and then they fall away. It's the valuing and the needing and the clamping down. It does not mean you don't have beautiful relationships. You have more beautiful relationships. It does not mean that you don't have beautiful places to live. Look where I live. I mean, it actually goes in the opposite direction to show that there is no sacrifice, but while you're going through it, it feels like you're giving something up. And you're giving up your pain. That's all you're giving up. But it's disguised in these really nice looking packages. And that's really, it's dressed up. It's actually draped in death. I mean, he doesn't mince words. Dripping in blood. I mean, it's like, but you see it. You see it after you walk through it, like, oh my God, if I would have stayed there, I would have died. I mean, metaphorically, I would not have lived my life. And I never would have come into this beautiful experience of unity. And
I'd like to just share something along the lines of some of the themes that she's brought up. And I know that many of you were here last week when I shared about, it was only 2 weeks ago that I heard about the store in Cologne Street. And that train has been going very fast, very, very fast. We had an attorney that happens to be the landlord of the place who was able to sort through the paperwork for the business license, got an angel of an accountant who is putting all the paperwork together. Sort of long story short, we have the keys. We have the keys, and we're ready to move in.
Yeah.
And it's just been a train. It's just happened so quickly.
Yeah.
And one of the things in my prayer about, because I've never owned a store. I never had a desire to own a store, but it was so strong. Find out about the store, and then it's just this. But in that experience, and I had all the reasons not to do it. I could think of a million. In the experience of just taking those steps towards where we're at with the store right now, I have just been in this I love the term the tractor beam, if you've ever heard that. You know, are you in the tractor beam, or get into the tractor beam? That just means get into the alignment of the Spirit. You know, what is the Spirit offering to you to be happy? You know, and it may be something way out in left field, something you've never done, and you know, the voice, the doubt thoughts will come in, you know, and they will be reflected by people around you. But at the same time, those ones that are in support of you show up too, and that's the ones you really want to align with. And it's just so beautiful. This morning I went and picked up Calico and Anya, and I have just been in this really joyful state just by taking these steps, and I just look around and everybody's happy around me. I perceive everybody's happy around me, and the truth about it is, if you're happy, the world is happy. That's if you think about what do I need to do to fix the world or do something, that is the most you can do, is to be in that happy, joyful state. And I can just tell you that it doesn't look like me sitting meditating every day, like to be in the silence. The silence for me actually looks really busy.
Yeah.
I'm calling people, I'm filling out applications. That's something I was in administration jobs before I sort of jumped fully into this. So it's like the Spirit is using those skills that I had before in the United States. Here in Mexico, the big difference, of course, I can't read really a lot of what's on the application, but it's still being used, and I have to really rely on other people around me to help. And really our prayer in this store, and really why is it that why would I want to open this store with friends and this community? And in our prayer, we put out the prayer, we want this cafe to be a blessing. We want this cafe to be a blessing to everybody that goes in there. We want this cafe to be a blessing to everybody that works there. We want this cafe to be a blessing to this whole universe, this community, this beautiful place that we call home. And that's what we're leading with. So the reality is, it's just like this, we have the keys, it's a blank slate, and now we're just like in prayer of what it's going to be in form. But I can tell you, I was in there yesterday just sort of marveling at the place, and people across the street from the place, they'd stop and take pictures, and they were looking at the place, and they were just like so, you know, in amazement or something. It was just really cool. And I know, Dawn, you said that people do that when they see the place, and it's not so much about the beauty of it, but there's something emanating from that place that is really wanting to be used by the Spirit. And and there's such an invitation in for anybody that wants to be part of that, you know, whatever they're hearing about it. And in that saying yes to that, I want to help with, you know, making the cappuccinos, who knows, then there's opportunities for healing. There's opportunities that present itself for practicing the forgiveness, you know, practicing what Suzanne has just shared. You know, it's like we don't even have to go find opportunities. They'll show up. And once we're in that tractor beam, you'll feel it when you go out, actually. It becomes so intolerable. And I shared with Suzanne this week, I did go out a bit this week and trying to hang on to another project that I, you know, the Spirit wanted me to let go of. But the beauty of that was I got to see the belief. And this is something that I grew up with, is that when you start something, you finish it. And that is just ingrained. So I was just like hanging on to that other project. And then I was like, I believe that. There's something that feels true, but the Spirit is saying, no, you actually have to question that. It's time for you to let go of that other project. And so it became really obvious, and I was able to join with you on that and get back into alignment pretty quickly.
That's beautiful.
But it was helpful from the perspective of seeing what it was that I still believed in, and a core belief that I've kind of lived my life by.
Yeah, and that core belief, actually, if we can just talk a little bit deeper about that, because when you were sharing it with me, we got down to the fact that actually what was driving that was the motivating factor was that belief, right, which is fear. So I got to finish something I started. But actually what was happening was she was getting over on top of what was actually supposed to be happening for the project out of that belief. So she was shadowing the thing that actually needed to blossom because she was intent. So what she did was she called whose project it was originally and said, you know, I'm going to step out. And obviously they can stay connected a little bit here and there, but she was starting to take over the project, which she wasn't supposed to be doing. But it was because of that belief. It's only going to get done if I do it, because I felt that. It was like, because the others don't operate the same way that Laverne does, right? She can just, but they have to go through their learning. They have to go through whatever and have their project be what it is for them. So it was really beautiful.
Yeah, and I just a final word about that, you know, that my experience of being in the tractor beam now is like the tractor beam is getting lighter and lighter and lighter. It's once you tap into that, it's pretty easy to stay in. So as things in the world seem to be getting darker, this is getting brighter, and it's just such a palpable experience.
That's beautiful.
Now I'll be going back to the United States next week for 10 days, and it's kind of the feeling of going into the eye of the hurricane, but it is a guided trip, and I feel that, so I have to just really trust that that's going to be the
Oh, we could just talk all day, because I could tell them about that whole timey thing, but we can't. I mean, just amazing stories that I mean, it's like every day 1,000 years goes by in experience, and it's so incredibly convincing and joyful that we just want to share it, and that the Blessings Cafe is just, you know, that's the name of it. It's because it's going to bless everybody. And it's, you know, we are so not interested in having a business. Okay, that's not at all what it's for. But it was literally something that could not be stopped. And so it's going to be fun to watch how it plays out. You know, that people will come in and they will feel that presence, they will feel that love, and they won't even know why they came in. So yeah, it's really been fun to watch how you've just. And if you remember last weekend, you were saying something about, well, I don't know how to do any of this. Well, it's all done now, you know. And this is the thing, that Jesus rearranges space and time, and I swear that's absolute truth. So, thy will be done, thy will be done, thy will be done. That is the message of this satsang, is it's thy will be done, because there's nothing more beautiful than that will. And the truth is that will and your will are the same. There's no difference. But while you're getting to that will, you feel like you got lots of differences with the love. And it's just the fear of that love. That's the only thing that shows up as a difference. And so we want to allow for all those differences to be made the same, and then dissolve into that light and that love. And we're so excited about everything that's happening here, because there's a lot of things happening here. And we're just trying to keep up with it. Yeah, we're actually looking across the street at this beautiful inn for community house that might be available. It's in the works, and then also some other things that hopefully we'll be able to talk about pretty soon. But just really that will support us all. You know, it supports us all. I think that's. I keep hearing it over and over, and I have been an exclusive person. I don't like, in the past, I've wanted to be alone in meditation. I'm more of a mystic, like in a cave. And now it's just like, oh, forget about that. Okay, let's just go. Let's do this, you guys. We can do this, you know. So it's really fun. Yeah, because so it's quite a ride, and a lot of people are wanting to come in from the States to be a part of what's happening here in Ahiik. So. Yeah, it's just all happening. So thank you so much for showing up. And
to live in a cave.
now what we're going to do next week is we'll be gone, so there won't be a gathering next weekend, but the following weekend, and we will probably have it at a different location. Okay.